Retrieval augmented generation with knowledge graph. Our flight network exists in a graph database in the form of airport nodes and flight connections between them. We want to query this network using natural language. For example, is there a direct flight from New York to Los Angeles? And the response would be, yes, there is a direct flight between these two cities operated by American Airlines. So, how can we build such a system? Let's choose our building blocks first. Neo4J will be our graph database. It can store nodes and relations between them and their attributes. It supports OpenCipher language to query and manipulate the graph data. So, we will use it to create and query our flight graph in a Neo4j database instance. Our AI platform will be Google Vertex AI on Google Cloud, where we will create our AI agent. This is our overall architecture. The key components here are agent, generative model, tool, cloud function, and a graph database. The agent acts as an orchestrator that uses a generative model to interpret user prompt, reason, and generate OpenCipher queries, while the tool is used by the agent to invoke a cloud function that runs OpenCipher queries against a Neo4j Graph Database instance to retrieve flight information. Let's look at the flow. User asks this question, is there a direct flight between New York and LA? The agent sends this question and instructions to generate OpenCipher query to the generative model. Model generates an equivalent OpenCipher query for the question. This OpenCipher query is sent to the tool, and the tool invokes the cloud function with the OpenCipher query as a parameter so that the function can execute this query against the graph database. Response in OpenCipher format is received from the graph database, which is returned to the agent. Agent forwards this OpenCipher response along with instructions to generative model so that it can interpret it and generate a natural language response. And this natural language response received by the agent is returned to the end user. And that is the overall flow. Remember that generative model is capable of reasoning. Therefore, this flow is not rigid and is guided by this reasoning ability. Let's create our database instance. Go to the Neo4j website, log in and create a new instance. Since I've already created an instance, I will not be creating it again. Here you will get a connection URI, username and a password. Now hit the open button. This will take you to the query page. And here you can use OpenCipher queries to interact with the database. Let's create some airport nodes using the Cipher language. As you can see, every node has the property name and city. Okay, so those 5 airport nodes are created. Next, we will create relationship between these nodes, and this flight to relationship has the properties of flight number, duration, and airline. And we have created these relationships now. Now that our flight network has been created, let's query for all the nodes. So here we can see our nodes, and if you click on any node, you can see its properties on the right hand side, things like city and name. Next, we will query for all nodes and relationships between them. Okay, so this would give us the entire graph. Reorganizing the graph a little bit. And here, if you click on any of the edges, that is the relationship, you will see its properties on the right hand side. So in this case, the property would be things like duration, flight number, and airline. Let's query for specific information now. So using this query, we are trying to find direct flights from New York to Miami. And we get no records. Okay. Next, find flights direct from New York to Los Angeles. Okay, so there is a flight between these two airports, and here we see the result. Okay, next, find flights from New York to Miami with maximum of one layover, and we use this query. Let's run that. Okay, so we get a response for a flight path from New York to Miami with a layover in Los Angeles. All right. And you can see this data in the graph form, table, or raw. Now we will try another query. Find airline and duration of flight from New York to Los Angeles. Let's run that, and we get a response. Airline is American Airlines and duration is 6 hours. Click on the Explore tab. And here you can explore the graph without having to type the OpenCipher queries. So let's do that. And this is a graph. Let's make some visual changes to it. Rearrange it a bit. We will change the color of the nodes, size of the text, and other such changes. Okay, so we will change size of these edges and text on them. Now that our graph database is ready, let's create our agent in Google Cloud Platform. In Google Cloud Console, search for Agent Builder and then click on Create App. Choose the app type as Agent. Provide a display name. Select region as Global. Hit Create. And our app has been created. Rename the default generative agent to Flight Agent. And then provide a goal. Help customers find connections from one airport to another. Next, provide some instructions. Your job is to generate OpenCipher queries. We will come back later and provide further instructions here. For now, save the agent. Our agent is partially ready now. Let's turn our attention to the tool. Go to the tool section. Hit Create. Provide a tool name. Graph Query Tool. Type is OpenAPI. Description: execute the OpenCipher query against Graph Database. And next, provide an OpenAPI schema in YAML format. Let's paste that here. This schema defines the interface for the cloud function. URL is the URL for the cloud function, and path is the name of the cloud function. Operation ID is the method inside the cloud function, and there is a parameter called query. And now save this. The tool is done. Let's turn our attention to the cloud function. I have already created the graph query cloud function, so we will just review it over here. Go to the source tab. This is a Python function. In requirements.txt, we have added Neo4J, and in the main Python file, we import graph database, and we have two methods here: the getDriver method and execute query method, which is the entry point to this cloud function. Parameter is query, and this method takes the OpenCipher query and executes it against the Neo4j database instance and returns the result. Cloud function completed. Now that our tool and function are ready, we can update the flight agent instructions to make use of the tool. Okay, so let's look at the instruction. Your job is to generate OpenCipher queries. Use this knowledge graph only as sample data to understand the nodes and the relations. So we provide a sample here for agent to understand the structure of the graph. If user asks a question, generate OpenCipher query, invoke the graph query tool, interpret the results and provide an answer. So all our building blocks are done. Our tool and agent with its instructions is all set up. We can test the agent now. So make sure that correct agent and generative model are selected. Let's prompt it with hi. Get a response. Our next question is any flights from New York? Okay, and we get a response. Yes, there are flights from New York to LA and Chicago airports. And you can see how the graph query tool was used, what parameters were passed, and what response was received. Let's look at the graph itself, and you can see that there are flights from New York to Chicago and LA. Our next prompt is there a direct flight from New York to Miami? I'm sorry, there are no direct flights from New York to Miami. And you can look at the graph query tool as to how it was used. And let's look at the graph itself. So from New York to Miami, there is no direct flight. Our next prompt is any flights from New York to Miami with one layover? Yes, there is one flight from New York to Miami with one layover in LA. Let's look at the graph. And there you can see that you can fly from New York to Miami with a layover in LA. Now we are ready to publish the agent. To publish the agent, select the dialog flow menu on the left. Hit the publish button at the top. Choose Unauthenticated API. Hit Enable the Unauthenticated API. Copy the code. Hit Done. Now open a HTML page where you want the chat dialog to appear. Paste the code we copied earlier under the head HTML tags and hit Save. Add a phone number. Let's add a phone number to our agent. Hit Integrations on the left hand side. Hit Manage. Create New. Choose the country code. Hit Request. You are given a choice of phone numbers. Select one of them. Provide a display name. Hit Save. Now we are ready for the final demo. Access the HTML page to which we added chat earlier over a web server. Hit the chat icon at bottom right. And now we can type our prompts. Which flight operates from New York to LA? The flight that operates from New York to LA is A100. What is the airline that operates this flight and duration? The flight is operated by American Airlines and takes 6 hours. Is there a direct flight from New York to Miami? I'm sorry, there are no direct flights from New York to Miami. With layovers? Yes, there are flights with layovers. One option is to fly from New York to Chicago and then from Chicago to LA and finally from LA to Miami. Another option is to fly from New York to LA and then from LA to Miami.
How can I help you today?
Hi, what are the available flights from New York to Los Angeles?
There is a flight from New York to Los Angeles with flight number A100, operated by American Airlines. The flight duration is 6 hours.
What about New York to Miami?
I'm sorry, there are no direct flights from New York to Miami.
Any flight with layovers?
There are 2 flights with layovers. The first one has layovers in Chicago and Los Angeles. The second one has a layover in Los Angeles.
Thank you for your help. So that was our tutorial on retrieval augmented generation with a graph database.